At a summit in Turkey, Muslim leaders called for global recognition of East Jerusalem Al-Quds as the Palestinian capital, in response to the U.S. decision on the city. Israeli forces clashed with Palestinians in the occupied territories in yet another day of protest against the U.S. declaration on Jerusalem Al-Quds. Saudi warplanes killed at least 50 Yemenis in separate attacks in Taiz province and the capital Sana'a. The Red Cross says life has stopped in its tracks in Myanmar's Rakhine State, where Rohingya Muslims live in constant fear of a crackdown. A defeated U.S. Republican candidate for Alabama Senate seat Roy Moore, who's grappling with sex scandal, refuses to concede the election results. Hello and welcome to Press TV's Top 5. The Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation has urged the international community to recognize East Jerusalem Al-Quds as the capital of Palestine.
Countries are invited to support Palestine by recognizing the state of Palestine, and this can be considered a reaction to this decision.
Yusuf al-Otaimin went on to say that the U.S. unilateral decision to recognize Al-Quds as the capital of Israel will not change anything on the ground. He added that Al-Quds is a red line and the status quo of the holy city should not be touched. He stressed that the definitive status of the city can only be determined through negotiations on the basis of a two-state solution and in line with UN resolution. The statement was made at the end of an emergency OIC summit in Turkey. That's a week after U.S. President Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem Al-Quds as the capital of Israel and pledged to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to the holy city. Meanwhile, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says the U.S. administration's decision to relocate its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem Al-Quds is a clear breach of international law.
Following the decision made by the United States of America to transfer its embassy from Tel Aviv to Al-Quds, and a decision that considers Al-Quds as the unified capital of Israel. This decision by the United States of America contradicts all UN resolutions, especially the resolutions of the Peace and Security Council, which the United States itself agreed to.
Abbas was speaking at an emergency OIC summit in Turkey. He said Palestinians will no longer consider the U.S. a broker of peace in any future negotiations with Israel, since they are neither honest nor neutral. He stressed that Palestine will go to the UN to make the U.S. president's decision null and void. The Turkish president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, also stressed that Donald Trump's decision will have serious repercussions which could lead the entire region into, quote, a circle of fire. He added that Washington's move was illegitimate and also unacceptable and would harm any efforts for a future peace deal between Israel and Palestine. Ken O'Keefe is a peace activist and former U.S. Marine who joins us from Montreal. Well, this time around, you have all these countries, 57 of them, but 22 world leaders who've agreed on one thing unanimously, and that is two things. Recognition of the U.S. For Israel's capital to be East Jerusalem, for that to be reversed, and for the U.S. to be removed as a mediator. Do you think they're going to follow that through with action?
Okay, well, the first thing is that the United States never should have been a broker in this peace deal, supposed peace deal between Israel and Palestine. They've never been an honest broker. So that should have been obvious a long time ago, but hopefully everyone will get it now. As far as East Jerusalem, I want to say something now that I don't know how many other people are going to say it, but I hope people listen, because I think that the recognition of East Jerusalem as the capital of a Palestinian state could be a trap in all seriousness, because let me be very clear. I believe in justice. It is not just for a state like Israel to be created on the back of dispossessing the people who have lived there for millennia. the creation of Israel itself is an illegal act. It did not take into account the rights of the people who live there. And we have millions of Palestinian refugees around the world who have no right whatsoever to return to so-called Israel because they're not Jewish. This whole thing is a monstrosity. And to allow the Jewish state, so-called Jewish state, to take even West Jerusalem, for that matter, is, in my opinion, unjust. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in the Palestinian cause or the Jewish cause or American cause, whatever. If we look at life and we look at politics through the prism of a just and fair-minded assessment, it is not fair for Palestine to be a fragment of what it was, because the creation of Israel itself was totally unlawful. I hope that the Palestinians do not accept a deal in which they only receive East Jerusalem, because I do not believe the two-state solution is a solution at all. In fact, I believe it is the greatest disaster of all. And the one thing that the Palestinians truly have going for them, aside from the fact that Israel is in full self-destruct mode, and as long as Palestinians can stay together, just let Israel self-destruct. It's happening. It is happening. But the other thing that the Palestinians have is that they've never put pen to paper and said, okay, we will accept this fraction of original Palestine. Once they put pen to paper and accept that, whether it's through puppets who don't represent them or a legitimate desire to accept a deal that I believe is unjust, the so-called two-state solution, which, by the way, let us remember, virtually every Western leader, every one of them, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, doesn't matter. Virtually all of them support a two-state deal. Shouldn't that make the Palestinians and all of us who are serious about justice pause for a second? Everybody from George Bush to Obama to Trump, all of them support a two-state deal, because it's a disaster. And it would mean that the Palestinians have basically groveled and accepted a fraction of their original state of Palestine, and ultimately this is completely unjust. And it will always be a fractured Palestinian state next to this behemoth of Israel, which will attack it with a false flag and justify all of its actions. So I hope that the Palestinians are very careful at this time. And I don't, while other nations can recognize East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, I sure hope that the Palestinians do not put pen to paper and accept such a deal. It is not just.
Thank you, Ken O'Keefe, peace activist and former U.S. Marine there from Montreal. Israeli forces have once again attacked Palestinians protesting the U.S. recognition of occupied Jerusalem Al-Quds as Israel's capital. In the West Bank town of Bethlehem, several demonstrators have been injured as Israeli troops showered the Palestinians with tear gas. In Ramallah, footage shows Israeli snipers aiming their weapons at protesters, who in turn respond by hurling stones. Similar rallies have also been held in other cities across the occupied territories. No official figure has yet been released on the number of casualties. Officials say that nearly 1,800 Palestinians have been injured during anti-U.S. protests since last week. 7 days after the U.S. moved to recognize Jerusalem Al-Quds as the capital of Israel, anger toward the decision shows no signs of abating.